Hello, hello, morning. Hello, hello. Hang on a second. Is the audio working? All right. All right. I think he made a mistake. So I think it's working now. There's a bit of noise around, so if you guys can't hear anything, please let me know. Apologize in advance. All right. Where are we today? Sorry, I'm just trying to finalize this setup. 1 second. Should have this ready before. Okay. Alrighty. How's everyone going? Hey, Jorge. Hey, John, Comics Legend. Good to have you here. Alrighty. So today we're gonna continue working on this guy, which I think is coming along nicely. I have a few things that, like part of the idea with these streams is not only try to do something cool and engaging and keep you engaged, like motivated to do your own work as well, but to show you different approaches as well as different techniques, tips and tricks, things that might hopefully help you with your own sculptures as well. So I was thinking about what else could we do with this guy, to sort of like to create a space to show you different techniques and different tips and all that. If I were to do this character and continue designing and further iterate and all that for a production pipeline, or in a production pipeline, or even just as a concept, I might do things differently. I might just, for instance, if it is just a concept, the pads that we did last stream, these ones here, I would probably just do a piece there and then just like use the damn standard brush or the knife brush that the custom knife brush that I have to sort of like do the lines, and that's it, and that will save me a lot more time. Although this didn't take too long, but you know what I mean, these type of things. So the reason I sometimes go the long way is just basically to show you all this stuff. So with that said, let's go ahead and start. And I think in this stream, what I'll do is, again, what I was thinking of showing you are a couple of like custom brushes, how to customize brushes, how to create your own detail brushes. So we're gonna do that today, as well as probably get to this box, which is currently just a cube. So we're gonna get to that as well. Alrighty, so the first thing I want to do is probably maybe group things a little bit. You know what? We'll just keep it simple. So I'm just gonna work on a custom brush. I'm gonna use the feature from 2020, ZBrush 2020. So if you haven't updated to the latest version of ZBrush, or to the one that I'm currently have here, which is 2020.1.1, there is a newer version I haven't updated yet. But if you don't have 2020, at least those features like the extraction brushes won't work. All right, let's have a look. Hey Everson, good evening. PM in Brazil, in the Amazon. Hey Javier, good to have you here. An extra miler here. Hey Chad. By the way, Javier, I try to find the latest images that you finish on the finished tag of the feed in the community, and I couldn't find them. If you can put them back in there, that'll be great, so that I can share them in the Instagram that we have. Anyway, that's a unrelated thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and select a plane 3D, and well, it's a primitive, so let's make it a plain 3D. So make polymesh 3D. Let's go into polyframe as well. So this is pretty low res, and we're gonna use this plane kind of as a basis to sort of like, you know, create the brush, and then we're gonna extract the brush from here and then take it into our working file, which is this one here. So the idea is that obviously we're gonna need a lot more geometry, because this is gonna be a detail brush, or a brush to create details. So I'm gonna go ahead and divide this, and you'll notice as soon as I do the first subdivision level, I'm gonna turn off perspective as well. If I go closer to the border, obviously because ZBrush is doing a subdivision, I'm gonna bring in the Epic pen here. And sometimes I just like to, you know, give you guys a bit of a, you know, I know that there are like different people from different levels, or skill level at least, in, or knowledge in ZBrush rather. So I'm just gonna give you a quick explanation of this. So whenever you have, let's say, a polygon like this, when you click divide, ZBrush is going to basically divide this and just average the point. So when there is nothing connected to this point, so basically this point obviously is connected to this area, this one is obviously connected to these ones, and this one to this one. This point here is only connected to 2 points, so there's nothing here and nothing here. So the point that is created right here in the middle, and another one here, when we click the subdivide, ZBrush is going to try, when this subdivide happens, is going to create an average of what these 2 points are going to be connected. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's going to push it there. So of course that happens when you subdivide, and the more you do, the more rounded you're gonna the result is gonna be. So if I click divide again, then ZBrush is gonna take this point now, and this point, and this point, obviously the rest as well, but if we focus specifically in this area, we're gonna create a new point in here and another one here. So this is gonna be a lot rounder. So let's click on divide. There we go. And if I keep clicking divide, there's gonna be more and more of those points, right? I just turned off and on polyframe to update refresh the view. Now this is an important concept, because if you were to have, or if you want to create something that is like a tileable texture, or you want to have a perfect plane that doesn't subdivide, what you have to do is you have to go to geometry, and there is this button here called SMT, which stands for, if you hover over it, it will tell you subdivide smooth modifier, and that will prevent ZBrush to smooth those borders. So it will just give you a perfect, you know, it will keep the shapes as they are. If you have a cube, for example, it won't subdivide it to a sphere, it will just keep it as a cube, but it will subdivide the pieces. It won't smooth it, but it will subdivide. So if I want to do that, all I have to do is undo all that. So let's pay attention to these corners here. I'm going to turn this off and then click subdivide a few times, and you'll see I'm subdividing, but I'm not creating that smoothing. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm gonna keep subdividing it like this, although in my case doesn't really matter. I just wanted to make sure you knew the difference for this button. So in my case doesn't really matter. I can just have, actually I'm just gonna do it in this standard way, and I'm gonna subdivide it up to maybe 1,000,000 polygons. If I need more, I'll subdivide more, but should be more than enough. Okay, so for this brush, what I want to do is some kind of like little wrinkles in the padding to just accentuate that sort of like poof version, like this, like a poof jacket, like one of those what's the name? Yeah, the North and I forgot the name. It's like a, you know, a famous brand like Kathmandu or something like that. That's like really easily identifiable, but we'll see. Have a look at the chat. Hey William. No worries. I'm glad you like the brushes. Yeah, for those who don't know, actually, if you go to the ZBrush Guide's website, I just published last week a new guide about sculpting hair and a new technique, and I share some brushes for sculpting hair, which are Actually pretty cool. I have them here. I'll show you very quickly. And they're free. You just go to the ZBrush Guides website and you'll find them in there. So you could potentially do an alpha just with this. So these brushes are essentially to just create this type of sculpted hair, but they give you a lot of control and build those details, very sharp details, very easily. So yeah, you have a lot of control over that. And the technique that I described in the tutorial basically covers how you could just go ahead and do details for like beard and that sort of thing, but it's applicable to anything else that you can do with the brushes. So they're free. Go ahead and download them as well. And I'm actually working on one more brush that I think is going to be very useful for you guys. Once I have it ready, I'll share it with you. I'm gonna reset my custom UI because my controls are not working. There we go. Alright, so I'm gonna start with the damn standard brush so that you guys can follow along if you want to. It doesn't matter if I do a line here or in here, in whatever mode or whatever direction I want to do it, it doesn't matter. Because at the end we're going to use the extractor brushes, and they're just concerned about the area that you choose. I'll explain that in just a second, but so basically that's what I want to do. Cool. North Face, yeah, for the jacket. North Face, that's the one that I was thinking. Yeah, so it's like, you know, very particular. The wrinkles in between the sewing bits, it's like that's what I'm gonna try to achieve in this area. Pablo, boa noite. Boa noite. Can you do one? Can you do one for arm hair? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do that one. That's like the same thing. It's just I don't know what an arm one look like. Like I would like to do a few more, like, you know, more like frizzy hair and that sort of thing. But sometimes I'm just gonna put this out there. Like the brushes and the resources that I do, I actually use them quite a bit, and sometimes I come up with those working on other projects, like for a client's work or personal project, something like that. If I run into an issue, or if I know that I can maybe speed up the process or improve the workflow with custom brushes or custom resources, you know, materials, whatever it is, I will go ahead and do it and create those resources, and that's what I share, right? So if I run into the issue of like I need a brush to create arm hair, then I will definitely do it. But otherwise, you know, I might put my efforts and my time into something else. But definitely, if I have the time, I will do it. But for something like so specific, it's pretty easy. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I will do is hold Control and click on this little undo line, right? You don't have to have any of the extractor brushes or the history brush selected to put this line in here. So the reason I do that before I begin is because if I hold Control plus click in this area, right, or in any point in the undo history, ZBrush will remember the entire state of this plane as it is right now. It's kind of like saving a morph target. That's why it's so cool, because you can do it at any point in the history as long as you have undo history. So as long as you have these points in here, right? You can even save a project, come back next week, open the project, and still be able to mark, as long as you save with undo history. I'll show you where that is. If you go to the file, and before you save, you enable this undo history in the project itself, ZBrush is going to actually save all of those undos in the history. All right. So the reason I do that is because I want to have this as it is, and now I'm going to start doing all the details that I want. And you'll see as I start sculpting or adding details, this point here is going to start moving and becoming smaller, 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 obviously, because ZBrush is going to create more and more undos. All right, so I'm going to, we'll probably need to actually, let's see, I'm going to try to find, and just a bit of a reference. It's always good to see that. Hang on, why it's my internet? Okay, so let's do tools, size, large size. So when I'm looking for reference for these type of things, usually a black color is the best option, just because since they had like a little bit of specular and reflectivity, you will be able to see a lot of the, like something like this for reference might be better, but this one I think is just the right amount. Well, it's a little bit too much. It has like an extra pattern, maybe something like this. Yeah, so I'm just gonna put this in my reference file here. So that's what I want to do for that area, and I'm gonna bring in pure ref so that you guys see what I'm actually working on. So I have this reference that we did from last time. I'm gonna put it here. That's gonna cover the chat actually, so I'm gonna put it around there. I'm gonna get rid of the chat, but I'll still be able to see it on my other screen. Cool. And if you guys have questions about this process, feel free to let me know. So I'm gonna concentrate on something like this area. And what I like to do is create kind of like a certain center line. Well, I guess I can create a couple. Let me think about it. Yeah, let's go ahead and create a center line. So I'm gonna do a center line. It doesn't have to be straight, it's just a bit wobbly in that case. In fact, I'm gonna do it with a custom brush. I'm gonna use the knife brushes that I have, and these are part of the digital clay brush pack, just so that I have something a bit sharper and deeper for this. And then go ahead and smooth that a little bit more. And then I'll go back to my damp standard brush. So you can achieve the same result just by increasing the strength of the sea intensity in the damp standard brush. And I'm gonna go ahead and start adding just some wrinkles, but I'm gonna concentrate on only one side. Okay, so probably this one, just to try to replicate this a little bit better. So this sort of area right here. So I'm gonna start with the what I would say they're the secondary forms already, or the main forms. But I'm gonna try to keep it very generic. And the reason I wanna do that is because if I do something like, let's say on this side, if I go ahead and do something like this as a wrinkle, when I take this brush and I duplicate this piece, you will see this particular detail replicated a lot of times, so it will clearly give away that it's just a a repetitive or a repetitive pattern or a duplicate of it. So I'm going to keep them quite generic in that sense, and then I'm just going to go ahead and refine them. And this is what I really like about this process, or this technique of building your own custom brushes using the Extractor brushes from 2020, ZBrush 2020, because you can spend as much time as you need to in this, just sculpting them basically, or generating these wrinkles. Now this jacket specifically has like the direction of it is pretty clear. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. I have pure ref, so it's gonna sit on top. But in this jacket you have these big pads, so the wrinkles, they have kind of like this direction, but I want to keep it generic, like I said, so that's what I'm doing them, a bit more straight, so that I can use them in different areas. So I thought I should point that out. And then what I'll do is start with maybe with the standard brush, or even the clay brush at this point. I'm gonna start with the standard one and just add a bit of volume, certain areas, not too much. I'm gonna keep it simple, and also you can hold the Alt key to invert the effect, and then just push things a little bit like that. So this is probably what I'll do to increase that that level of compression, I guess, that is happening here. So I'm just pushing things down first to create kind of like these gaps. There we go, and then start building a bit of volume. Now, since I have subdivided this to 1.05 million polygons, or 1 million polygons, when I use the smooth brush, it's kind of like hard to see the effect. So in this case, I would just use the smooth stronger brush, which you guys can have. You can access to it from the, it comes with ZBrush. I don't know if it's already, if it loads for you guys. For me, it loads automatically because I put it in that folder to make it make ZBrush loaded automatically every time that I start ZBrush. But if not, you can go to the brushes. In the lightbox, you go to brushes and then go to there's a smooth brushes folder, and you can grab it from there. And it basically allows you to smooth things a lot faster because it's way stronger at this level of subdivision. So this is not something that I would use if I don't have enough geometry, just for these situations. All right, now the next thing is going to be using the clay brush a little bit, and I'm going to use that closer here just to add a bit of volume, kind of like in between. I'm actually going to reduce the intensity of the brush size, sorry, of the smooth brush. And I'm going to use this clay brush to build this and just push things a little bit so it's not a perfect straight line. And the reason I do that is because, the reason I do it with the clay brush is because with the standard brush, if I use it here, it would also affect the other side. So with the clay brush, I have a bit more control on that and just focus on one area. I usually spend, at this stage, I spend a lot of time working on the actual alpha that I'm going to grab. But more than that, when I'm doing my custom build brushes, or when I'm building my custom brushes rather, I would do something like this at this stage, test it out, and if it works, then I can refine this further. If it doesn't, I'll just start over again. And that's mainly what it takes the longest when I'm developing my own custom brushes, the process of testing and see. Sometimes the simplest alpha is the one that works the best, like like without too many details, nothing too complicated. But you have to go through the process of testing which one of those simple alphas actually gives you the best result, and that's kind of like what I spend the time when I'm doing those custom brushes. Okay, so I think this is starting to look nice. I'm gonna go ahead and use the standard brush as well, or again, and I'm gonna sort of like extend a little bit of these bumps or wrinkles or folds. These are more like folds than anything, just so that they could integrate a little bit easier. And especially when we use the extractor brush to grab these, there's gonna be kind of like a fade towards the brush, and I wanna be able to have some extra details, some extra volume. So if you see it from the side, you probably see that extension a little bit better happening there. All right, I'm gonna use the damp standard brush again, and I'm gonna use smaller brush sets to create these tiny, so like dimples, like this. Another thing you can do actually is you can use the mask lasso, and we can mask out an area like this, and that will just prevent us from changing or tweaking this side of the brush, or the alpha that we're creating actually. Now this is another reason why I decided to show you guys the process with using a reference, because sometimes you might look at this and say, this is good enough, this works. But if you use an actual reference, then that's when you realize all the little things and imperfections that you could add to make it more realistic, I guess, or more believable. So that's what I'm doing here. There's some points that you get too close to the other side, the brush tries to grab the depth of the other side, so just be careful with if you're doing something like that. So that's why it's also good to mask certain areas. I'm gonna remove the mask, get closer here. And I'm going to use, just for, at least I showed you a little bit of this sort of like more custom way to build this, but I'm going to use a custom brush. Give me 1 second, I'll show you. Oh, hang on, I see some activity in the chat. I'll get to it in just a second. So I have a brush in my clothes and drapery. So these brushes are from another course that I have called the Clothes and Drapery. It's like a mini course where I share all of these resources. There's a couple of brushes that in this case will look or will work really well. So I would use the Magic Fold Soft. I think that's the one that I want. Maybe yeah, let's try this one. I'll just give you an example of what this brush does. So it just creates these things very quickly, and then I just smooth that out. So I think this one will be, just a better tool for these areas, because it will just sharpen this a lot more. And another like feature of this brush, or advantage of this brush, is I can just go over the same wrinkle and it's not gonna destroy it. It's actually going to enhance it. That's pretty much what I want to do here. And again, this is going to be actually pretty tiny details, so I don't, in the actual model, so I don't need it to be like so extreme. But it's good to try different things and see what works and what doesn't. And hopefully this is going to work. I mean, the more undos that you do, I'm going to turn off the thumbnail and the cam view. The more undos, or the more things that you do when you're building this, the longer it's going to take for ZBrush to actually grab that alpha. So you'll see here at the top left, here is my point, the one that we saved with the original state of this plane, and now we are up to this point. So I'm going to use the Inflate Brush, and I'm going to tighten things a bit here, not too much, but it is important to make sure that this looks tight, just to enhance that effect of compressions, of the compression folds rather. And it doesn't matter if there is like actual geometry intersecting a little bit, because this is going to be just an alpha, so it's going to be kind of like a screenshot of whatever you see from this angle. So it's not a VDM or anything like that, so it's totally fine. And one thing that we might have to tweak later is the fact that this point here, hopefully it's not going to be too bad, but this point here should in theory be very close in the like it should be in line with this point, so that this will start back again in here. So, and it doesn't look like a set of broken lines, and it looks more like a straight line. Hopefully I'll show you what that is, or what I mean by that. But I think I'm happy with this. Again, you can spend more time, you can even do 2 sides, but I'll show you another technique. In fact, you could start just by adding just a little wrinkle, grab that and use that to create more wrinkles, and then grab that and use that to keep building kind of like exponentially in a way. Okay, let me just check the chat, and then we go into creating that custom brush. Hey, Night Shadow. Are shocked at what Autodesk has done about their licensing. Not sure what, I don't know. I haven't read the news really. I haven't heard the news. I'm assuming they did something like they got rid of I don't know, student licenses, or I don't know. If it's something bad that is affecting a lot of you guys, don't worry about it. Like just use Blender. Blender is the future in that sense. In terms of like a software that does more than just one thing. At what point of your process would you break symmetry? We'll get to that. Probably not at this point. Use C Witcher, which changes ZBrush controls to Maya. The problem is now that the mask hotkeys won't work. Okay, I don't know anything about that. Hey BN Witcher, how you doing, man? Really good to see you in the stream. Thanks for stopping by. For those who don't know, Witcher is the one. Is my friend that did the. He's a fantastic ZBrush, all round artist, really. Go ahead and check it out. His work. He's the one that did the face in the kind of like relief clay face for the brushes, for the digital clay brushes pack. So it's fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and grab these details and start using them. So now I'm gonna go ahead and use the Extractor Brush, just the standard one. You have different ones. Let's see. You won't be able to see that. Anyway, it's this one right here. Okay, the one that has like the 3 lines, or yeah, it's just called Extractor because there's 3. There's Extractor, Drag Rect, and there's another one called Extractor Dot. And the difference is just that they use different brush strokes. So I'm gonna select Extractor Brush. I'm gonna increase my brush size a little bit more so that I can grab more details. So a bit more than that. And I think something like that should be fine. We'll see. We might have to come back and try different things. And then you can just press G on your keyboard. I have a custom button that it basically is just G because I had yeah, all my buttons in the Cintiq are already taken. So I'm gonna press G, and that accesses this mode that allows you to basically click on this point and drag up to this point. And now we just wait. And what ZBrush is doing right now is actually doing pretty quick, is analyzing that mesh that we saved by holding Control and clicking on the undo history, checking all the things that we did all the way up to this point, so all the details that we did, and it's gonna see the difference, and just from the difference between that original mesh and the new details, it's gonna grab the details. So if I open up my brush palette, here is the alpha, which is pretty nice. So I think it works, right? And all the settings of this brush is ready to go. So all I have to do now is basically use it, and there you go. So I think it's working really nice. There's a few things that you can tweak, but now we have a brush that creates this puffy jacket effect. And you can I would use this one as a starting point, and then I'll go in details, and whatever there is something that like repetition, I will get rid of that. So that I think is working fine. We could go ahead and smooth things a little bit. Let's see what we can do about this. So I think the main issue is with these points. So let me see what I could do to make this better. Let's see. We already have this alpha and it's working. What I'll do is I'm gonna soften these edges a little bit more, maybe from the back. Yeah, I think the problem is with this. So I'm gonna make sure I don't have that much of a overlapping geometry. I know I said that shouldn't be a problem, but ZBrush is trying to grab the whole depth of this document. So let's see if that improves the alpha. And this is what I mean, that I spend a lot of time fine-tuning the actual alpha that's being used. So even if this one, I think it works, I go back and see, okay, hang on, how can we improve it? How can we make it look a little bit nicer? And you'll see it doesn't really affect the shape of it, but it does hopefully alleviate some of these issues that we had in the actual extraction. Just gonna do a little bit more. Oops. And this issue came from the inflate effect that we did. All right, so not a lot of difference. So now we still have this point here that we saved. So all we have to do is go back to the Extractor Brush, set the brush size roughly the way that we had it, maybe a little bit more than that, and then go ahead and click on G on your keyboard, bring in this mode, just draw a straight line and wait for the process to happen. But you'll see it's just very easy. So you know, you can spend a lot of time just tweaking and changing things, but ultimately building the actual brush is super easy, super handy. All right, so now, ooh, this one is slightly different. Oh, there we go. Maybe the brush is too big. There we go. So now that one has a lot more potential. Oh, come on. Right? Definitely better. So we just saved or fixed that problem by doing that. There's, as you can see, there's this tiny, so like spiky area here, which actually not too bad. We can hold the Alt key as well and invert the effect, and that will give us something interesting. Anyway, but that is something else that we can actually fix in the process. So let's continue refining this alpha a little bit just to find out. We went from something that was not great to something that is working a lot more. Now I'm gonna try to fix that. So the next thing. So for this, what I'll do is I'm gonna mask this area. By the way, if you're not too sure about you know, what you're doing and you're happy with the progress that you're making tweaking your alphas, all you have to do is just save the images that that you're creating. That's all. All right, so now that I masked that area, I'm going to invert the mask, make sure that I mask certain areas here of the details, because I don't want to change that. To be a bit careful about this, maybe with the mask lasso. Because the actual details are not the problem. The problem is the depth of the original line, because I did too many, you know, like strokes rather than just one. Okay. Right, so we have this unmask area. Now what I'll do is I'm gonna hold Control and click on the mask, and that's going to blur the mask a couple of times. And then outside in the canvas, Control click and invert that, and maybe Control and click once more to soften that. All right, let's invert that. And now I have this unmask area, and what I can do is bring in the gizmo center to the unmasked areas, and then I can use this to flatten all of that just a little bit. Right, and then let's see, from here looks fine. And then with everything still masked, I'm going to use the smooth brush just to smooth everything even further. Right, but I could be a little bit loose with this now that I have everything masked, so it doesn't matter. All right, so that probably is going to look or work a little bit better, but this is basically what I wanted to show you guys, the process of doing this. All right, let's go ahead and click on Extractor, increase the brush size, I think that's fine. G, click and drag. And this is obviously something that you can do within the mesh. Like, you don't have to create the plane. You can be just sculpting on one mesh, or in the character that you're working on, or the prop. You can save a state of whatever subtool you're working on, do whatever detail you want, and then use the extractor brushes to grab them. That's a very organic process as well. I just wanted to show you the process that I would go through for a more controlled way to generate a cleaner alpha, at least. So we have our third alpha, and now we have a much cleaner version of this brush. So I'm happy with this. We can go ahead and actually, I'm gonna save this brush. I'm gonna call it Puffy Jacket. Right? But now that we have this, we can go ahead and work on a lot more details, or even improve this a lot more. So for instance, just to give you an idea of how you can build this process of creating. By the way, now that I created this this brush, I can go to the brush palette. I forgot to do this, so that I can see it and identify it better. I can hold the Alt key and click on this select icon, and that will just grab this whatever I have on the screen. So I know that this is the alpha for this brush. The problem is that I did it on top of the the extractor brush, so I'm gonna save this again, and I can go ahead and go to the brush palette, and at the bottom you probably won't see this. Oh yeah, you can. So I'm gonna click on reset all brushes, and that should in theory bring back my brush. There we go. I had to just restart my UI. You don't have to do this if you actually clone the brush, which I can show you how easy it is. So I'm gonna load my brush. Oh no, where did I put it? Oh no, this is a C tool, sorry. Load brush. There we go. So here's my brush that we just created. So what I'll do now is I'm going to probably just mask. Yeah, I'm gonna mask half of this roughly, maybe a little bit more than that, so that we don't affect that original indentation, and a little bit of the like the top and bottom. You don't have to be precise about this. And then control click just to on the mask to blur it, invert it, control mask to blur it, to blur it a little bit more, and I'm going to invert that again, and I'm going to use the same brush, so I can only affect this area, and I want to do the same motion but from the top to bottom, so from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to do this. Let's do it again. Right, and then that creates a sort of like interesting gap. Let's see. I'll do it a few times until I get something that kind of like what I'm looking for, which is a bigger gap in this case, like this. I think this one is fine, and then we can just blur the mask, go to the back. Yeah, I think this one will work fine. Just gonna smooth it a little bit. And then we can refine it even further with just a standard brush. And remember, we still have also smooth stronger. We still have the point that we set. So now everything is going to basically when we grab this is going to also take into account the older details that we did, plus all of these ones that we're doing. So you can create very complex stuff. And since we use exactly the same alpha, or the same brush with the same alpha, all I'm doing here is just adding a few new pieces or a few new wrinkles to add variation to it. maybe a bit more of the standard brush to push things up a little bit more. There we go. And you can also use the move brush to do some slight tweaks. So I'm going to use the mask lasso, try to mask right in the middle, blur a little bit, and then I'm going to use the move brush to just notch things in place a little bit. All right. So a lot of work for this detail, and you won't even be able to see it that much, but hopefully this gives you an idea, and hopefully yeah, gives you an idea of how you can create your own custom brushes as well. You can create very complex details very easily. So let's grab the Extractor Brush. This one will probably need a larger brush size. Something like that should be fine. G, click and drag, and wait until the process completes. But now we should, like, I mean, how much time we've done? Maybe 40 minutes, and if you take all the chatting and talking that I do, about 30 minutes, 35 minutes to create these two brushes. And once you have these assets done, then you can spend all the time just detailing, basically. So now we have this other brush, right, that gives you this nice effect. We can go ahead and, you know, keep tweaking it and soften certain things, but I think this will give you a good starting point. Then you can use something like the smooth peaks to, or the smooth valleys actually, to fix this, or to soften it. So you see there's some hard edges around here. You can use the smooth valleys, and that will respect a lot of the details and then smooth things out a little bit. But yeah, but I'm happy with this, so I can go ahead and, if I don't want to ruin my original Extractor brush like I did before, I can click on the brush, go to clone. So now this is a clone. You see the name now, it says Extractor_1, yeah, but it does the same thing. It's just an exact clone of the previous brush. And then I can just do what I did before. So I'm going to the brush palette, hold the Alt key, actually, yeah, Alt key, select icon, no, save, and number 2, there we go. And I think that's it. We can now go ahead and move on and go back to the character and start working on those. One more thing I would say is that the reason I left the gap this big is for 2 reasons. The first one is so that when we actually grab the alpha, it is easier for ZBrush. So not that it's hard, but it will be a cleaner alpha than if everything's like all mashed up together or very tight. And the second one is because it gives me the ability to have the 2 options if I need to. So I can use this brush and then maybe put like a zipper or something inside, right? That gap. But also I can go ahead and use the Inflate Brush or the Pinch Brush, and then that's not the Pinch Brush, the Pinch Brush, and then just do that manually, right? Let's use the Inflate, right? And that, you know, that should give you that should give you an indication of what's really going on there. All right, so I have my brushes here, so I'm gonna start with this one, the one that is only one side. Go back to my character, and before I do that, let's see if there's any questions about that. I just saw it, Marlon. Very nice. Very nice hat. Marlon Muñoz. By the way, if you guys, I don't know if it's still on. I think I just saw it. Marlon has a contest for like superhero characters. So I think it's still on. So check it out. Hopefully it's still on. I'm not just talking nonsense. Is what the G key does. Can you explain it again? Sure. So the G key. If I go to alpha. So in the alpha palette, you have this switch here, which is what the G is for. So if you press G, this one turns on, and this is basically the part of the new feature in ZBrush for the extractor brushes. So you press this one, you don't have to press G, you can just go to the alpha, click on this, and then use it to extract the details, right? You have these sliders here that allows you to change the width of the alpha, the blur of the seam between, you know, in our case, we have a seam at the top and then bottom, so you can change how much blur happens in those two, but the default settings are really good. Unless you want something very specific, you can go ahead and change it from here. And the alpha width as well, it will change the resolution that is grabbed. I believe how big the alpha it is. So yeah, you can do that, but that's what the G does. I have it here because I mean I do have the G key on my keyboard, and I can press just G there, but I try to, you know, minimize my contact with the keyboard. I try to do everything on the screen. In fact, most of the time I just work like this sometimes, not even with this one open, and because I have all the tools that I need. This is just to give you an insight into how I really work behind the scenes. Obviously I prefer not to have a lot of things, and I just press my custom brushes, and I can basically control most of the things during the sculpting process in these two with these two palettes. So I have a custom palette for editing meshes, you know, paneling, deforming, the polish, that sort of thing, and the same thing for brushes. I can edit, brush, all that, right? And you know, I have other ones that allow me to, for instance, if I want to work just in this area and I want to go into solo mode, I can bring in my custom palette from Wacom and I just go into solo. So I haven't mapped this to my pen, so I can go into solo. You know, I can have other things like grouping stuff, group visible, merge, you know, subtool, ZBrush subtool, so I can append new things, I can reorder subtools, I can copy subtools, and those are things that I just, you know, I have my masking things in here. So for instance, if I go into solo mode and I just mask this area like so, I can go ahead and go to masking tools here, and I can grow or blur that. So I can blur it, you see it's the thing stays there, or I can, you know, sharpen it, blur it, sharpen it. I can create an alpha out of this. I can also hide an area like this, and with the same tools I can grow visible or shrink it, right? So that's why I have the tool set up like this. So going back to my point, the reason it doesn't mean that all the time I have no tools, but I try to stay away from using the tools, and that also reinforces a little bit the speed of the workflow, I guess. But what I was saying, so the reason I have this G here is because since I try not to use the keyboard as much, all I did was create a custom macro that all it does is press this when I click on this button. So I don't have to have the alpha palette here, right? I can have this closed and I just press G, it will turn that on, and I can grab my alpha. It's a long explanation for a simple thing, but just to give you the thinking behind it. Hey Pablo, can you turn the brush into Vdm brush also, or are Vdm only apply like an insert only? You can do that. Yeah, you can totally do that as a Vdm. It wouldn't be of much help right now. The thing is, with Vdms, I use them. I don't use them as details, which is something that this brush does really well. So, in order to have, how can I put this? In order to transfer the amount of details that we have in here, you know, you have like about 1,000,000 polygons into the mesh, right? You'll need a lot of polygons in the actual mesh, right? So if I grab this as a VDM, in order to see these details the way that I have them in here, in my actual mesh, I would need at least 16 million polygons. Because if you think about it, that's going to be a detail that sits. Let's see if that makes sense. So if I have a VDM and the details are kind of like this big, which is currently what the alpha looks like, in this area, right? If you think about just this alpha being the square that we had in the other tool. So this one right here, right? This tool is 1 million polygons, right? And this entire tool is currently 5,000, right? 5,000. Oh, come on. You can see it here. It's 5,000. So the issue is that if I go ahead and do a VDM, right, those details are not going to be very visible because, yeah, there's no resolution. Now, by the same token, you also need this resolution with the alpha. The difference is that you can go into the highest subdivision level. Right now, I don't have many subdivision level. I just have dynamic enabled, but I can use the subdivision level, which is what I'm going to do. And then at the end, I just go to the lowest subdivision level and bake those details from the alpha. Whereas a VDM is going to actually distort or displace the geometry a little bit better. It's a very specific question, but you can totally do it if you want to. I'm not gonna do it in this specific example, but if you want to, all you have to do is probably, let me just do it and see if I can fix it, because I didn't work on this thinking about doing a VDM, but hopefully I think it might work because it's still pretty flat. So I'm gonna go back into subdivision levels to, let's say, no, actually let's leave it as 3 maybe, and I'm gonna use the mask lasso. Just gonna mask this so I don't ruin it. Okay, go back to the highest subdivision level. Oh, there's something weird here already. You can already see it. All right. So if you go down to the deformation palette, you should have this this slider called Morphed Grid or Relax Grid Plane. So pay attention to what's going to happen on the corners, and that's an important thing for the VDMs. You have to have the corners straight, like a perfect plane, not like what we did here. So you can do Morph to Grid, and all these corners will go back to it. If you do a lot of pushing and pulling within the plane, I just make sure that once you run this Morph to Grid, it's actually flat. But all right, so now that is perfectly square, like the corners. I can remove my my mask, and I can go to the Chisel Brush. Right, so this is a Chisel Brush that has all of these details. I'm going to clone it so I don't affect the original, and I'm gonna go to the brush palette here, and in the brush palette I'm actually gonna change the stroke as well. So right now this is what the brush does. I'm gonna go to stroke, change that to drag rect, so now I can click and do this, and I'm gonna go ahead and click from mesh. So under the brush palette, if I click this, now I have this VDM that I can do this, and I can change the C sub to C add, and now this is a VDM, and you can do this, and you can grab those details. The other tool would be dots. So you have to tweak this if you want this to work in a similar way. You'll have to spend a little bit more time working on this, changing the lazy steps, the lazy radius, and all that. But you can totally do it. So that's your VDM, and it's actually pushing things. And in this case, you could actually have more indentation, sort of like right now. This thing, hopefully you guys can see that. This thing is kind of like this, in a way. So that is so that we can grab those details as an alpha. With a VDM, you could go crazy and just go like that, because it's not a one-to-one. It's not a black and white image anymore. It's actually displacing the vertex. So you have information not only in one axis, but in the 3 axes with the VDM. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. You can totally do it. So I just want to go to my brush. Oh no, where did I put it? I'm gonna have to load them again. All right. Cool. So let's go to the character. And I'm going to select, already have it selected, and I'm going to go to the dynamic subdivision, which is currently what I have enabled. It is a pretty low res, right? And what I want to do is make sure I have a single polygroup for each one of these things. So each panel or each line of these, they're not connected by geometry. So we use panel loops. You can watch the previous stream about how we did this. So if I smooth all of this, actually, let's change to smooth stronger. You'll see they're separate pieces. So I can just simply go to auto groups, and now each piece has its own polygroup, which is pretty handy. And then I can go ahead to go to dynamic. And the good thing about dynamic is that before I commit to going to subdivisions, I can tweak this. So the amount of subdivision levels will equate to the amount of actual divisions once we convert that into an actual subdivision mesh. Let me check the time. We have plenty of time. So I'm gonna go ahead and increase this to 4. And you see it's a little bit, you can still see a bit of the polygons, but it's pretty good. I'm gonna actually do 5 levels of subdivision, and this is still a preview, looks super smooth, but as soon as I apply this, before I do that, actually, I'm gonna duplicate, take one to my original folder, just in case. Did I do it? Yeah, I have 2 of the same there, so it's cool. And there we go, select the right one. And I'm gonna enable dynamic again, apply dynamic, and now I have 5 million polygons in this one, so maybe it's a little bit of an overkill. Let's see the amount of detail that we get at level 5. It's probably good enough. Yeah, we might need 6, but we'll see. All right, so now I can use this, but I'm not gonna use it like this brush. I'm not gonna use it like that because obviously I'm gonna mess up this this bit. So instead, what I'll do is I'm gonna hold Control and Shift. Actually, I want to start. Actually, let's start with this one. I'm gonna enable Symmetry, and I'm gonna click here and do this. That's it. So you'll see what that detail, all the effort that we put into creating this is gonna give us is just that, which is fine. Now I should mention that before I go into details like this, I would probably spend more time changing the paths a little bit, so giving them like a secondary forms and breaking it apart a little bit because it's too clean or too smooth. But I want to use this, so I'm just gonna show you, and then we go back and tweak those things. Okay, so I think that's working fine. Just going to solo mode again. I'm gonna extend this tiny bit. And now I'm gonna, because I have different polygroups, so the second one from left to right is pink, and the one from right to left is green. I need to hold Control and Shift to select this one, invert the selection, and click on that one, so that I can work with symmetry. Actually, if I want to, you know what? Let's do that quickly. I'm gonna go back to the first subdivision level, and I'm gonna go ahead and use the Group Visible tool, and I'll do the same thing for this, so that basically we can isolate this a little bit faster. Oops. and obviously so that we can work with symmetry. That's this is the whole point of this process. Okay, so now we can go back to the high subdivision level, select this one, and we are now in symmetry. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on, turn this off slightly. Just want to see roughly where should I put the line. See, let me think. I mean, it works. It's just gonna be hard to sort of like guess where I should place the line. So I think we can just do a quick poly paint to know where we're placing the things. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm gonna use just a red line. So I'm just gonna do this, and I know now that the lines that I place are gonna be below this poly paint. And this is something that I do often as well. When I'm sketching, when I'm defining or solving a design or just iterating, I use poly paint quite a bit. Actually, let's save some time and do this like that, so that we get at least the two parts in one go. So what I was saying is that I use poly paint quite a bit as a tool to help me do markups on the mesh. Sometimes it's really good to, I do sometimes shading. So when I'm working on a face, for example, I use black and white values just to enhance certain things. Especially if you're doing likeness, I'm not the best at likeness, to be honest. I very quickly turn into my kind of like stylized mode, which I prefer. So I think if I put an effort, like if I put more effort into it, I could do a better job with the likeness. But after certain time, I just get a little bit bored with it, and I feel like I need to exaggerate things and make it more interesting. And so that's why I leave it to the expert. In fact, Marlon, if he's still there, like, he's probably your go-to if you want to do likeness. He's amazing. But I prefer to stick to my guns. All right. So what I was saying is, when I do kind of like something like that, doing little values of gray using poly paint, it's really helpful. It doesn't have to be, poly paint doesn't have to be just a tool for texturing. It's just a tool for whatever you need. So this is just a markup for that. All right. So let's go to our brush. Number 1, I think it is. Yeah. All right, so now we can isolate this bit, and we can do it here a little bit easier. And on the other side as well. Oh no. So if I turn on polyframe, or turn off polyframe rather, you see those are roughly in place, which is what I wanted. Okay, so let's turn this back on. Go to do it on this one, the main one, the first one. We worried about the side or the end bits later. If you guys have any questions about anything else, put it in the chat. Maybe this is a good time. If it is not something that I have to show you, maybe it's a good time to try to answer some questions while I'll do this, because it's a little bit boring to watch and it's repetitive. It's the same thing, just being careful placing this. You can increase the lacy radius, by the way, if you wanna, you know, have more control over how you place these over longer areas and that sort of thing. It's not perfect, but let's do it properly. So if I increase my lacy radius, something like 32, that's under the stroke palette. I'm gonna exaggerate it. You'll see that red line that sort of follows me or follows my cursor. That is the lacy radius. So you have to have the lacy radius on, and that's in the stroke palette, and then you can enable that as well. So it just gives you more control overall. Ooh, what happened here? Oh, I think that's the end. Okay. In this bit you won't see it. It's covered by the head or something else. Okay, 2 more to go. Let's see if there's anything in the chat. Nice, at least time to the road. Nice, at least at later time down the road, would love for you to share how you map your Express remote keys with ZBrush. Actually, if you go to the ZBrush Guides website, so that's the website that I run, you can go to the tutorials page and just search for reviews, I think. So I did a review on the actual Cintiq that I'm using, and that and in that I cover how I set up my hotkeys or my Express keys, not just for the Cintiq, but also for not just for ZBrush, but for other software. So I use the same keys or the same shortcuts for every software, or at least I try to. And what I mean by that is that if I have, for example, if I rotate with Alt in ZBrush, right? Like if I need to click Alt and then click on the screen to rotate in ZBrush, and then if I'm using something like Blender, which is, you know, something else that I'm trying to get into a little bit more, you do the same thing just by middle mouse button or something. So I try to connect or use whatever is required in each software, but map it to the same key, so that I don't have to think about, you know, which key is for what software. Like for me, the keys are kind of like the same for everything, although behind the scenes what is connected to that key is different for each software. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, I think we are close. That this is starting to look a little bit more interesting. You see all that little padding. That's what I was going for, but of course we have to keep working on it, but we can build on that. Let's have a look. Awesome, cool, glad you like it. Probably you met them some. Thanks, mate, I really appreciate it. Glad you like the methodology. Yeah. Sound is low. Is that the case for everyone else? Very low sound? If it is, let me know, because I can just crank it up a little bit. But it might be just for you. Haven't had anyone else mention it. Maybe use intersection masker. Doggy, yeah, I could use that. The problem with intersection mask, or the problem in this instance, is that for intersection mask, you will have to have different subtools. So I would have to go through the issue, through to the trouble of separating all of these bits to use it. It's a little quieter. Maybe something to do with oh no, it's also in. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know. I can always speak louder or increase the volume in the OBS. Check out Kubisi on YouTube. Just released his Scarlett Johansson likeness from scratch. Ah, yeah. I know who you're talking about, of course. I have a hotkey window panel in my ring Wacom menu, but it always disappears. Is there a trick to have it stay on when activated at ring menus? I think you are referring to this ring menu. If you click on this pin, you can just leave it pin whatever you want and then just work. I don't know if that's what you mean. So you can just put this whatever you want and then keep working and then use it. It's just a matter of clicking on this pin. Yeah, I don't know if that's the answer to your question. We need more tutorials for making stylized World of Warcraft Dota armor. I'm sure you can find it in YouTube. The thing for me is like this is such a specific request that although it's cool and I will love to do it, I prefer to focus on techniques and focus on workflows that are not specific to one thing, if that makes sense. So basically giving you guys the tools or will help you out with the process, so that then once you know that kind of like background stuff and basics, you can do whatever you want. So you could create that armor if you follow certain processes that I'm happy to show, but it might not be, I might not get to that tutorial as soon as you might hope for. And that's really what the whole idea with the Extra Mile course that I teach online is all about, because although I go through every single step of my pipeline from all the software and everything else with a character that I develop myself, and it's very specific, the tools and the way that I try to explain things is to enable you to come up with whatever you want, right? So if you actually check the work that is being done by the guys at the Extra Mile, you can go to the we have an account in Instagram called the 3D Concept Artist, 3D Concept Artist, and that's the Instagram account. Or in my personal account, I also share. There's a highlight for student work. I'm actually going to show you because it's really amazing what they've been sharing lately, to be honest. But yeah, you will realize that there's nothing. They're not the same, or like they're not following my specific character, if that makes sense. So they're not doing the character that I explain the process with. They're doing their own projects, but using the tools that I give them to create their own stuff, and that's what I think is so amazing about the whole thing and the work that they're doing. So if you go to my Instagram and you click on this student work, you'll see some of the work that the students are doing. This is Javi. Javi, I don't know if he's still here. He was here before. I'm just gonna go through this. These are kind of like from late last year. I'm gonna show you the recent ones. So every single piece, every single artwork and character or whatever they're doing is very different from each other, and it's totally different from what I teach. Sometimes they more stylized, sometimes they're more realistic. It's all about the process and the steps, and yeah, it's kind of like a systematic approach on generating these very high quality renders or high quality illustrations. Very different styles, very different stuff, and that's what I think is really valuable, right? This is just from Adam, and there's another new one from Felix. Felix is actually super impressive. He's this is kind of like almost his third project in ZBrush. He started like from the very basics, and he's come a long way. Anyway, hopefully, I don't know if that answers the question. So bottom line, I might get to do that armor World of Warcraft tutorial, but unless I don't find a specific reason to do it, you know, to show a specific or not so specific tool or resource, it might take a while. Can you do this type of ZBrush brush creation in 2019? No. You can do ZBrush, you can build brushes, but this type of thing, the simplified way that I just did it using the extractor brushes is not there. You can totally do the same thing. Like you can create the same brush. It's just in 2020 it's easier with extractor brushes, and you have your settings sorted in a way. So I'm going to hide this. Let's see. We might have to use the move brush to adjust some of these things, but overall I think they're working fine. You know, this one doesn't have to be perfect. And like I said, if I were to just simplify even further this mesh and use maps to generate, like not maps, yeah, well, baked maps to generate these details, I would probably do a retopology for this whole thing. So okay, before we move forward with this, I'm gonna select the border, and I'm gonna change this to the other brush, this one, and this is still a dynamic subdivision mesh. So let's go ahead and increase that to 4 and apply. And we'll probably need more resolution. Actually, that's not too bad. Let's do one more time. So 3 million polygons. So a lot of it, a lot of polygons in there. And have symmetry enable. Cool. I'm gonna increase my lazy radius quite a bit, and I'm gonna do that again. So this is just gonna be on the outer area of this mesh. A good thing, or another trick that I can give you with this brush is that you can use, in this specific example, since we are using details on both sides, it doesn't matter if you go left to right or right to left. So if you actually do little pieces right to left and left to right, you can variate the details, so it doesn't look as, you know, it will look a little bit more organic. And certain areas like these connections, that's something that I will work on it after, or work on after. Right? I don't know if maybe I should do something inside. It will make sense as well. Kind of like the same thing inside. So I'm gonna repeat the same process using polypaint. So that I know roughly where to place this. And I'm gonna hide a few subtools. Well, actually, you won't see any of this, so I'm just gonna leave it like that and then make up the rest. All right, solo. And I'm gonna use this to turn off RGB. Hang on. Okay, getting there. Let's go ahead and do this on the other side. You'll see with the with this lazy mouse enabled, we have a lot of control over the placement. So again, just to reiterate, that's on the stroke palette. All right, turn off polyframe, polypaint, and yeah, roughly there. Again, we can do things like, you know, use the move brush to notch things a bit. And this is part of the refinement, but at least you guys have an idea of you know, how to approach this. And then you can use something else to fill in this area with, you know, stitches and all sorts of things. Really, I think it's good as it is. I like the gap in there. All right, so almost more than half in the stream, just focusing on this. So let's go ahead and continue working on it, and I'll show you a couple of extra techniques, so something else that you can do. I'm gonna check the chat again. Okay, we must use 20 Extractor Brush. Yeah, the Extractor brushes are part of 2020, but if you have 2019, you can just update. ZBrush is free. Why can I get the Extract brush that you're using? You probably don't have ZBrush 2020. Have you seen the new stuff from Unreal 5? Yeah, that's incredible. It's exciting because I think you will be able to just go, you can bridge the gap and simply go from concept, or like from the cinematic mesh into production. So a lot of you know, no more, probably no need for, I'm not entirely sure, I haven't read in like haven't gone too deep into it, but probably I imagine you wouldn't need normal maps or anything like that with the new technology. Cool. Which mesh character is useful for rigging Dynamesh subdivision? Shown a Sculpture Pro mesh. For rigging, you have to have subdivisions or a lower res. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do, but you know, a Dynamesh object might not be ideal. It will just make the animators or the riggers cry. Why can I get the extra tools that you are using? I mean, the ring that you see. Please read properly. Oh, apologize for not reading properly. I don't know what you're talking about, sorry. Maybe it's this one? That's a Wacom thing, if that's what you're asking. If you're asking for this ring, that's the Wacom stuff. If you're asking for this, there's a custom UI in ZBrush. Don't know which one you're talking about. All right, so let's go ahead and continue. I'm going to show you how to add some details and work on these paths a bit more. So I'm going to select this one, go into solo mode. I'm going to use a custom brush like I showed you before. In my cloth and drapery tutorial, you can find that. Otherwise, you can use the standard brush. I'm just going to do it with this because it's going to be easier. So I'm going to show you what this one does. So the X folds allows you to get these ones, these folds very quickly. So it's going to be probably easier. You know, I can use a large brush like this and then use the smooth brush to refine that. So I'm going to use that one. I'll show you a quick technique for this as well. And another one that I could use is probably the where is it? The Wrinkle Wrap. So the Wrinkle Wrap is similar. It's just going to wrap, gives you these wrinkle wraps basically. So this is what I mean, that I didn't want to spend too much time detailing this because I knew I have these brushes at my disposal, so I can just do this type of thing. What I'll do though is I'm going to save a Morph Target just in case. And then I'm going to go to the process of very loosely just thinking a little bit about the direction of how this might move in with the actual character, and then create these wrinkles like that. that's it. So that's why I didn't want to spend too much time on that, because now I have these wrinkles. Now, some of you guys ask, or some of you, I think Comics Legend, you ask about at which point I will break symmetry, and this is a good example of when I would break symmetry. These details are currently symmetrical, so I'll show you what I did thinking about this in that sense. So we have these details, but they could be a little bit too strong. So I'm going to use the smooth brush. I have the smooth stronger, so the smooth brush, the normal smooth brush, and I'm just going to soften some of these. Actually, I'm going to use the smooth stronger so that it's faster for you guys to see this process. All right, so yeah, hopefully you see a little bit the effect of the before and after using this brush. Now the reason I saved a morph target is so that I can break that symmetry. So I mean, you can do it without the morph target and start without symmetry straight away. But in this case, most of it is symmetrical. The only part that really I want to make sure is not symmetrical is when you see the character maybe from this angle, because if you see it from the back, I mean, you can tell it is symmetrical. I guess you can change that. Maybe let's do that as well. Anyway, the point is that I saved a morph target, so I can, can you guys see it? Yeah. So here I saved a morph target, so I can go to the morph brush, and I can take this other side. So let's turn off symmetry, and I can just do this, right, to go back to my previous state. Let's do the same thing here at the back, maybe just here on the center, so it's not as obvious. And then let's go back to the brush. I'm going to turn down the intensity a bit. Smooth things out, and now this is not symmetrical, or it's not as obvious. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm trying to follow the same flow that I sort of like established in the previous one, but obviously this time is not going to be symmetrical. That is how I would approach that, sort of breaking the symmetry a little bit. All right, so now that I have these, I'm going to show you another brush. And again, all of these brushes are just to speed up the workflow. As you can see, it's much faster to just do it manually, but you can totally do it manually. You can do it with a custom alpha. You can follow the same process that we did at the beginning, just to create a specific alpha and then drag and apply those. That's also an easy way to do it. But yeah, the reason I'm showing you this is just because it's going to be faster for you guys to see the result than me doing this one at a time. But you can do it with the damn standard brush and the standard brush as well. I'm going to use another brush that is called the Magic Fall Soft. And this one is really good because I called it Magic Fall because it's kind of like, it's a little bit like, it gives me, a magic result. But this one allows me to do like this type of cuts without destroying the mesh as much. Usually this is too much. So I want to use this one closer to the edges, just to create this sort of like sharper cuts a little bit and emphasize a little bit of those other lines or other folds a little bit. And also, if you have a tablet, it helps to have that pressure on. But this is something that you can totally do with the standard brush. That's what I'm getting at, really. So this process is just basically sharpening some of those details that using the smooth brush, I kind of like delete it. All right, and then we can go to the standard brush and, you know, do like with a larger brush, maybe some bumps. Again, this is just to break the silhouette a little bit so that it's not exactly the same. The same thing goes for the outer edge. I probably wouldn't use as much wrinkles, but I'll show you another. I mean, a similar technique, but apply different. There's some areas that sort of like lost the details, unless, yeah, we just push them in too much. But you know, that's also part of the. I believe it creates a more realistic, yeah, a more realistic effect, just because it's not all the same. So not all parts are the same. So that's the pad almost done. I will go ahead and use the damp standard brush to fix things like what you see here, so that it makes sense to have some kind of like compression going on here, this area. So this is just using the standard brush. You can go into solo mode and actually see where you're applying that pressure. But you know, this is like completely up to whatever tool you also have in here. So I will probably leave this one towards the end of the process, because you know these ooh, what happened there? I think I'm gonna do a quick save. Hang on. Oh, don't know what happened. Oh yeah. Well, 20 minutes away from the end of the stream, I lost my control on the Wacom. Again, I don't know why there's such a conflict between the stream software and ZBrush, or not ZBrush, Wacom. But anyway, let's continue with this. Basically what I was saying is, this is something that I would probably leave towards the end, because I don't know exactly the shape of the other subtool that is creating this compression, or you know what I mean. So I don't know if this is going to be like that. I reckon it's going to be pretty smooth and simple, so that's what I'm doing it like that. But yeah, let's go ahead and do the other one, and let's see the chat. How you make that cool brush? the one that I just showed, that's from a pack, well, from a course that I did about cloth and drapery. I did it in the same way that I do all the brushes, a lot of testing, a lot of, you know, trying different settings for whatever I need until I get it. There's not like a step-by-step, I guess. You can also use the brush using the layer and lower the opacity if it's too strong. Yeah, absolutely. The reason I didn't do that is because I do want the strength towards the border. So I know what you're saying, but how can I explain it? So I think it's important to, because yeah, again, there's many different ways to do the same thing in ZBrush. That's always my thing, right? But the reason I didn't do it is for a single reason only. So if you take this one, for example, from this angle, I'm gonna exaggerate it here, right? It's kind of like a rounded shape. If you use a layer in ZBrush, the sculpting layers in ZBrush are linear, so they go from 0 to 1, right? It's in a straight line. There's no deformation as in a curvature or anything like that, or a bezier or anything. It's just straight linear. So if I use layers, right, and I do those details in layers, all I can do with the layer is, yeah, I can do a detail like this and then lower the opacity, and then I will have something like that, right? That is if I do things with layers. which are great for certain things and in combination as well. If I use the Morph Target, so if I use a Morph Target, I can do the same thing. So I can go with the, the sculpting brushes like I did and create the same details. But because the Morph Target is here, I save that at this point. Then when I start using the Morph Target or the smooth brush, I have the same details here because I didn't touch the borders. And then towards the center, it becomes more like this. Hopefully that makes sense. That's thanks to the Morph Target. You cannot achieve the same result with layers, if that makes sense. So, and the only reason I wanted to do that is so that sort of like more concentrated, stronger wrinkles are closer to these edges than in the center of the sculpted bit. I don't know if this makes sense, but that's why I use the Morph Target rather than the layers. So you can totally do it. There's many ways to do the same thing in ZBrush, like I said. It's sometimes about what's the fastest way to get somewhere. I know that that's not necessarily usually, or not usually my my approach. I usually test things and see what works better, but that's the idea. Thank you for the hairbrushes, no worries. I'm glad you like them. I'm working on a new one that I will share with you guys soon as well. All right, so let's do this bit as well, and hopefully we can finish today's stream by having this one ready. We didn't have a chance to work on this, but 15 minutes, I reckon we can do something. All right, so we have this solo mode. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in. You know what? I'm gonna use the X folds for this one. Yeah, this one will be fine. Exactly what I need for this anyway. Again, I'm gonna store the Morph Target, and I'm just gonna go like this. And this is a brush that I created to create that, or to sculpt and build areas like at the bottom of your pants, like if you're creating a character with pants, generic jeans or something, or a roll-up sleeve, for example. So these are the type of compression folds, or the X folds type of folds that you'll get in those type of scenarios. All right, so very rough, but you get the idea. You can even go a little bit over certain areas. I'm gonna use the damp standard brush. Just gonna exaggerate some areas. All of these is still, I'm very, I apply this very loosely because I have the Morph Target, so I'm not too worried about it. And if I don't like something, I just go with the Morph Target and bring it back to its original state. And that's kind of like the power of the Morph Target, really. But it can be used in so many other ways. It's crazy. All right. So again, following the explanation that I just gave you about why I use this method in this case, instead of the layers, I would use layers mainly to blend things like pores and wrinkles in the face and that sort of thing, and control the intensity. But I will mix the layers with the Morph Target as well. I'm gonna go to the smooth brush, smooth stronger, and I'm just gonna smooth, kind of like with a smaller brush size, smooth the kind of like the top or the outer area of this this border. And this is what I mean about, like, I want to concentrate the wrinkles towards the edges, because that's when they will form. And if you think about it, in this sort of like puffy jacket, when it expands, or let's say if it is just filled with air, for example, it will the pressure of the air will make those areas a little bit flatter and tighter, whereas the areas that you have the sewing beads, that's where you get the fold. So that's what I'm trying to achieve here with the smoothing of these areas. Just trying to focus on the folds towards the edges. Okay, so now this is looking more interesting than before. Alrighty, so I'm gonna do a quick save because I'm a little bit scared now. I don't know what I did and it might crash. So yeah, on top of this one you can add insert brushes like the I have some other brushes that you can, I don't know if I have them actually in the ZBrush Guides website. I'll double check, but I have some that you can use to add stitches, or even the stitches brushes inside ZBrush will help you. There's some stitching brushes. I forgot where they are. Yeah, Stitch Basic. This one is just an alpha, but it allows you to create those stitches very easily. Anyway, it obviously is gonna depend on what sort of design you're going for. But I'm happy with this one. I'm gonna go ahead, and we have 10 minutes, so at least I'm gonna try to think about this at a sketching level for this cube, and we'll probably continue there or continue with this in the next stream. One thing I will do though is from all of these pieces, these ones, or these kind of like pads that we did at the end, towards the end, are the ones that are closer to more of like a final, how they're going to look at the end. We might do some tweaks and add some damage and, you know, break the symmetry maybe a little bit more, but roughly this is how they're going to look. So what I want to do is give them a different poly paint color so that I know these ones are closer to finish and I can concentrate on whatever that is gray. So I'm going to select these ones and fill object just with RGB, fill object, and now I know that the green ones are kind of like good to go. And also I'm going to go to all low so that we can work a little bit faster. Now all of these ones have subdivision levels and that sort of thing. Alright, so I'm going to select this one, go into solo mode, and actually before I go into solo mode, let's think about this thing a little bit more carefully. So I'm going to use white. Alright, let's see. Can those brushes be bought? The brushes only, no. So the brushes are part of the resources that are for the course, because those brushes, how can I put it? They're part of the course, so you'll need the course in order to get them. But also in the course, I use them, and they're part of the resources that I use. So even if you get them, you won't get as much value out of them, because it's in the course itself that I show you the progress and the process of how you can use them. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really make sense to have them outside of the course itself. All right. So what I'm gonna do with this, I think the overall shape is fine. I might just extend it a little bit here, not too much, with just to add a bit of a, you know, trapezoid here at the bottom. And I'm thinking maybe something else here. And this is a centerpiece that we can utilize to break the symmetry or break the illusion of symmetry even more. So at this point would be, this character is very symmetrical. I know that the details that we did for these pads look asymmetrical, but we need something stronger that would break that symmetry. So what I'm thinking is maybe create some kind of spherical or like cylindrical thing in here, and a couple more smaller here, and maybe some indicators or some lights, some scratches and all that. Keep it simple, and then I might use these to add a tube that goes underneath here. I'll figure out a reasoning for this later, and then maybe some wires as well. Because remember that I'm trying to fit this character within the Star Wars universe, kind of. So little details like this help to accentuate that sort of like, you know, like a scavenger sci-fi type of thing. So it's gonna be pretty simple. Ultimately, what I need is something like that I can use just an insert brush, or just do a custom Z-remesher object, couple of small ones here as well. I can just use the same tool. For this area, I need some kind of like tool like this, but also can be an insert mesh. The tube itself, and these pieces, the top and bottom, those would be, you know, zero measure probably, and these tiny ones as well, that could be tubes. So I have about 5 minutes to finish for today. So what I'll do is maybe just concentrate on these bits, and just maybe this one as well, and then we'll leave it there, and the next stream we continue with this. Alright, so let's go into solo mode. And I'm going to enable dynamic subdivision for this, but this one doesn't have a lot of resolution. So in this case, because this is such a simple geometry that we use when we were blocking this out, I can use the Q grid. So the Q grid is going to add this sort of like grid of subdivision, or like this grid before the smoothing is applied, and then you get a sharper version of this, and then you can just play with the coverage and bevel. I like to play with this using a more reflective material with a sharper line, and then I can see better what these tools are doing. All right, maybe like that. And what this is, the reason I'm using this and not going into subdivision is because I can turn this off, go back to this, you know, simple mesh, and work on what I was talking about. In fact, let's go ahead and go to SimModeler, right click on an edge. I'm gonna do bevel, click and drag. There we go. I'm gonna use this tool, this polygon, sorry, holding Alt to select it, push that up. This one is gonna be pretty tiny anyway, or not as high. Same thing for the bottom, tag, a bit more. And then I'm gonna use the masking tools just to invert that mask, center to the unmasked areas, and create that sort of shape. Even, you know, break it out apart a little bit more. All right, so we might have to tweak those settings now that we have extra geometry there. So dynamic, still pretty good. And the other thing I would like to do is maybe select all of these ones, go to insert region only, just push this in a bit, holding Alt before I release the click to give this a different polygroup, and then you Q mesh. Oops. Oh, that's actually that's not too bad. It's unexpected error, but it's not bad. Let's see if we can make it more intentional than that. So click and drag. And here's where we can see the lights, and I like this this edge kind of like that, so we'll leave it as it is. But the rest is going to be, actually, yeah, I'm gonna tag everything else, right click, Q mesh, push this in just a tiny bit, holding Alt to change the polygroup ID. There we go. And let's enable dynamic. All right. So we might need to add some loops around here. You'll see this kind of like artifact. It's hard to see probably for you guys, but that's just due to the lack of subdivisions or the lack of edges. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. So insert, click and drag, one here and then one on the other side, just so that it is consistent, and one here as well. That should fix the problem. Perfect. So we have the base ready. We still have 3 minutes. Let's go ahead and do the other bit. In this case, I reckon we can just start with a cylinder. Before I do that, I'm gonna do a quick save. Go to initialize, and I'm gonna reduce the V divide, so the vertical divide, to nothing, and 32. I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna do 16. Yeah, I'm gonna do 16. Make it a polymesh 3D, and this is gonna be the piece where the tube might sit. So I'm gonna tag these ones, click and drag, tag with a different polygroup. We can use this to scale, polygroup all. Oops. You mesh, click and hold shift. Oops. Need to make sure polygroup all is selected. Shift to just push this. Click and drag to add a bit more. Let's go ahead and do insert, or inset actually. Insert the entire region, so the entire polygroup all. So I'm going a little bit fast here just so that we can finish on time. And I have other streams, and even in the ZBrush Guides website there's lots of tutorials about zero measure actually. So I know I'm going a little bit fast in this one, but all right. So something like this, we can go ahead and do something interesting. Like, let's take this one, push it up so that it snaps. Oops, snaps to this one. There we go. Just on one, and then we can take these polygons and extrude them up as well. Cool. And we can use the dynamic subdivision just to see how we can improve this slightly. So we can add just a simple insert here just to sharpen this. Whoops. Insert loop here to just sharpen that edge. We can take this one as well and just sharpen it a little bit more. This one as well. And I like these ones, but let's see if we can also sharpen this a bit. Insert multi-loops, no. We can use the Q-grid, no, sorry, nah, actually, let's just do the edges. It's gonna be much easier. I like the little curvature here, so I'm gonna keep that. Get out of dynamic. I'm gonna add a loop around here and here just to sharpen those, and I think we are good to go with this one. Again, I just wanted to keep it simple. Actually, I want to sharpen this, so I'm gonna get rid of that curve. All right. If anything, we can take these polygons, whoops, hold shift, push them out a bit, or even extrude them. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna leave it like this. So let's go to copy, go to our working file. I'm gonna do paste, scale it down, get out of solo mode. this will be kind of like sitting there. Let's see. There we go. And we can go ahead and go to solo mode. I'm gonna mask an area and go to solo mode. Push that back so that is part of the whole thing. And I think that works better. And that's it. That's it really. So we can, before we finish, oh, should finish now really. Yeah, let's just leave it there. But hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of an insight into some other process, and you know, shortly you will see the progress between this and the previous stream. So you can just focus on different parts, but for the next stream, I don't want this to roll into more than 4. So this is the 3rd one already that we're working on. So for the next one, I'm gonna go ahead and prepare this hopefully a little bit more if I have time, so that next stream you don't have to sit here through a lot of the repetitive things. I'll just explain it quickly, and then we can move into, maybe we can leave the next stream for detailing the head maybe, and I'll show you a couple of retopology techniques very quickly. But yeah, we'll do that, and I'll leave it here. Last minute questions in the chat. Let's see. Cool. Can you display how many points polygons you have? Here, if you look at my UI, the total points is 8 million at this point, and out of those 8 million, I think half is, at least, or more, is the other paths that we already subdivided, the green bits. Epic, thanks Artin Times. Yep, it's Epic Pen, one that I use to draw on the screen. Maybe some glasses. Yeah, that would be cool. Maybe some kind of helmet thing with glasses. That would be interesting. Pablo Gabriel taught techniques to drag a mask and press Control. You don't have to invert the mask. Yeah, if you want to use that technique, it's just you just hold Control, and then when you drag in, you just press Alt, and that inverts the mask. So it creates an inverted version of the mask. Because I have things in my Cintiq, like I mentioned before. For me, it's just easy to just hold Control. I don't have it right now, but it's easy to hold Control and then just click outside. It's the same thing. It just saves one click, but not that bother for that. Do you use Marvelous Designer for clothing? Yes, I do. I use Marvelous for, you know, to get the base, but I always come back in ZBrush and detail it. So Marvelous is genius for the bases. And the latest update I have, I think my license is for 8 or 9. I don't remember. I think 9 maybe. I don't know if it's the 9. There's some really nice tools like Quadrangulate and that sort of thing to export the mesh. So I do that, and most of the time I export the mesh from Marvelous as single-sided, and the thickness, I'll add the thickness in ZBrush. And the reason I do that is because with the single-sided mesh, it's much easier to add folds and details and, you know, all sort of stuff within ZBrush, and then add the thickness after. But yeah, I use it all the time. Well, not all the time, but when I use complex garments and, you know, meshes that have characters that have clothes, Marvelous is probably my go-to as a base mesh. But like, there's nothing that come out of Marvelous that is ready for me. I always come back to ZBrush and polish it in there. I'm sure you can get a pretty high quality level straight from Marvelous, but I just feel more comfortable coming back in ZBrush and where I know the tools, I guess. Sibotuki, I forgot about the name of this guy. It's called Sibotuki. Let's do penned insert. Do a star. Let's put it here at the top. Sibotuki, that's the name, right? Sibotuki. All right, I'm gonna quick save. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and for all the questions and all that. Hopefully you found this useful, and we'll continue this next time. Yeah, I'll leave it here, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.